Today we are going to learn on this lesson what are middlewares. So middlewares is a class execution that stays between your route and the execution of your controller action. So let's say that, for instance, you have on our example here this contact us form. We execute an action, and then before it arrives that action to your controller action, it can pass by middleware. So it can pass by something that filters that HTTP that comes, that request, and then it executes something in the middle, or it rejects your request. So what we are going to see here is that what are the default middlewares that comes with Laravel, and what are the ones that you can create by your own. We're going to do one example so we can see it working in this contact form. So if you go to on our demo project, if we go to the app HTTP, you see there is a file here called Kernel. So in this case, this kernel, HTTP kernel, it's where you'll find already some default middlewares here. For instance, you can see that you have here these middleware, protected middleware attributes, and then inside you will have like 5 middlewares here that run. So on this part, it runs, or any request that you do, it always runs this middleware stack that is here: a check for maintenance mode, a validate post size, a trim strings, convert empty strings to null, and then a trust proxies. So for instance, let's go here to this check for maintenance mode and see what it says. So it's a class, so it's a normal class. You see, it doesn't inherit from anything. And then there is a protected attribute here, a construct here, but then there is only one method called handle. So and that is how middleware work. They will have by default this handle, and here, as you can see, it says if this app is down for maintenance. So actually, if if you run the artisan down, then it will automatically throw an exception saying currently we are in maintenance mode. So as you can see, all the requests that you do, in this case, will go by this middleware stack that is here, and then execute one by one to see if it passes to the next middleware. So at the end, you see here, return next request. This line here makes this pipeline of middlewares to pass to the next one. In this case, the request that was passed here on this argument. So if you chain some middlewares one after the other, the request will be passed by one, and then the other, and then the other, using these return next requests. So if we go a bit more down here on the file, you can see that it says web, and there is middleware groups that we can use. So on your routes, if you define a middleware group called web, then it automatically will run this stack here. So as you can see, there is a bit of difference here, like a verify CSRF token. This is, for instance, if you are submitting a form, in this case, an HTTP request of type posts. It runs this middleware to see if you actually have the CSRF token defined on your attributes from your form data. Then you can see there is another one here called API. And finally, with two middlewares, two alias middlewares, one called throttle and another one called bindings. Finally, you have also alias middleware here that you can use. In this case, you have auth, basic, binding, scan, and guest, and throttle. This can be used with the alias directly. We're going also to see an example about this, how we can configure a middleware on our route file, and also how we can configure a middleware in our controller. Okay, so let's create our first middleware. So to create a middleware, you go to your project folder and you write PHP artisan make middleware. And then you write whatever you want. So let's put one that calls check random number. Basically, just for the sake of the example here, we are just going to create a middleware that throws a random number. And then if that number is, for instance, 50, less than 50, it will throw an exception. If it's more than 50, it will continue to the next middleware request on this case. So let's just click enter. And here on the left, Laravel places your default middleware that you created on this HTTP middleware folder. And here it creates automatically everything that you need to run it with this handle already here. So see, and in this case, how do you instantiate, and how do you bootstrap the middleware on the framework. So besides having it here, you now need to add it to the kernel. So what we are going to do here is just adding here. You can, if of course you've had it here, in this case, if you add it like app and then HTTP and then middleware and then check random number. So in this case, it will run on any request that we do in this case. So here, we don't want to do this for now. What we want is just to create an alias for it and then use it wherever you want. We can put it on the group, but I'm just going to create an alias here calling, in this case, like check random, and then you assign it. Sorry, I just have a new keyboard and I'm still struggling here a bit. Like this. So as you can see, we now mapped a middleware alias to the class of that middleware. And this is the way that the kernel gets instantiated with this new one. And from now on, we can use it. So if I just do an F5 here, nothing happens, right? Because we're still not using this check random. So let's put it to use it. But first, let's just do here something very quick. Okay, so I'm just going to do something like number equals to rand 1 to 100. Again, it's just for the sake of the example, right? Just for you to see how it works. And then if number less than 50, we just throw an exception, right? Just do like throw exception, and then we just put it like error number less than 50. Then we are going to use it on a better example, but just for you to see how it works. So as you can see, I just say if this number is less than 50, then throw an exception. Done. Nothing else. If it's not, then it's going to pass to the next middleware, as you can see here, until it ends all the middleware chains. So how do we now run this, for instance, on this form? So this form, as you know, it was the create that we have here on our route. So if we go here to our route file, you see that I have this resource file. So actually it's creating things beneath, as you know, to give all the controller actions for it. So for instance, if I go here and I do PHP artisan route list, so it has all of them here: write, contact us, store, create, updates. We also have this on the welcome. So for instance, let's just put it on the welcome page here, the root one. So I'm just going to say that the way I want to use this middleware, it's actually to pass here the middleware. So I just write middleware, and then I pass the alias here. That is the, I'm just going to close this one, check random, and I write it here. I'm going to save it. I'm going to the root of our projects and call to define final exception. In this case, I just need, new. And let's see what happens now. So if I go here to the main page, I do an F5, several F5 until it gets that random. See, error, number less than 50. So what happened is that this middleware is always running here, and of course it's just a random, so you can see sometimes it runs, sometimes it doesn't run. So see, so again, this is the way you configure middlewares. You can do whatever you want on your middleware. Huh? You can of course verify the request that comes. You can change it. You can verify if, for instance, if a user is already authenticated, that it's already one given by the default middleware that is called auth. And for instance, in this case, let's show a default one just for you to see. So if I go here and I call it auth, I save. So auth, if you go into the kernel, you see this auth here. So this is a default one that comes with Laravel. Do an F5 and look what it says. Route login not defined, because what it means is that it sees that I'm not authenticated, and it automatically tries to go to the login route to authenticate myself. Okay, so this case, as you can see, you can do whatever you want here on the middleware. You can also pass parameters on your middleware. So for instance, coming back to this check random number, let's say we want to pass the number that we want to verify this random on. It is 50 that is here. Okay, so I just come here and I say number. Actually, I say let's say I say range. I say, just as an example, I come here and I put it as a range, less than, and then range. So in this case, we will pass here the check random, and then I pass a number, 40. So if I go back here, I do some F5s, see, sorry, it was too fast, error, number less than 40, see? So we can pass parameters here as much as you want. You just need to put a comma, and then you pass the next one, etc., etc. So middlewares can be used to define here on routes, but you can also use them on your controller action. So how can we filter, for instance, on this case? If I go here and I just write to say that I have a middleware, and I come here and I write again the check random, it will actually apply this middleware to all the routes. So if I go here and I just, as you can see here, when you do the route list, you see on the last column it says the middleware that is being used by the route. So if I now see it again, it appears check random on all of them. So maybe you don't want to do this. Maybe you just want to use it on some of those controller actions. So here it's where we go to the last part of this session. That is, we are going to use it on the controller. So we now go to our controller that we have contacted as controller. And here on the construct that we will create, we are going to define where we want to use this middle. So let's create it here. So for instance, I say public function construct, and I just come in here and I say, okay, so on my instantiation of my class, I say I want to use this middleware, and here you say again what is, so if for instance you say check random, it's going to use it everywhere. It's exactly the same as we have before on the routes file. But if you want to use it only for instance, the index, you come here and you just need to put it like only, and then you define here the, for instance, create, or for instance, the index, or in this case, wherever you want to define. You can even put it like this, you can put like index, and then create. So in this case, it will use this middleware, but only on those one. You can also use the except, that is exactly the contrary. So it will use in all the controller actions except for index and create. So again, it's very powerful in terms of how you configure your middleware to be used specifically on some of the controller actions that you have here. So middlewares are just like this in a first glance, let's say in this lesson from the course. But of course, there is more flexibility for the future. There is other methods that you can use here, like you can use like the terminate method, that is for another type of operations, but that's for more advanced classes. But again, I think it gives you a very good highlight how we can use it and how you can configure it in a way that you can then use it, for instance, to validate specific permissions, for instance, for some users that you have, like you are running some controller actions and you say, okay, I just want specific like super admins or a specific user profile that I have. Then you can use middlewares to then differentiate and verify and validate if those criteria are met, to then continue to go inside your controller action. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the video tutorial, and see you again on the next one. Thank you very much.